We Were Different by Sybille, Nigi, Lechner of Fairlight 2094. Narrated by Janine Penfold. What has age taught me as I grow older? Not very much, and yet many and important things. We were refugees at a time when refo was a bad word. Worse, we were enemy aliens coming to Australia from Austria in 1940 when I was 5 years old, and Australia was at war with our country, our ex-country, which wanted to eradicate us. We were a family of Jews, escaping by minutes from the Holocaust to a place as far away from Europe as my father could find. In those days, Australia was very far away indeed from everywhere, and Sydney was like a large country town. It had one live theatre, one restaurant, the Fiacre at King's Cross, no cafes, and hardly any cars. It was very different from Austria, but we all loved Australia immediately. My parents loved the lack of formality. They loved the freedom from petty tradition of behaviour and class. But our family was different. Not only were we foreign, but my mother had always been a maverick and had very new ideas as to bringing up children and how to keep them healthy, happy and constructive. So, at school, we were different. We carried different school bags, backpacks instead of the traditional suitcases used at that time, wore cotton swimsuits instead of the prevailing heavy woolen ones, stretch fabrics had not yet been invented, wore comfortable uniforms instead of the straitjackets then in vogue, and stayed away longer on our holidays than the actual allotted dates. We did well academically in spite of all this, but we never really fitted into the social scene. I spent many a lunch hour hiding behind some trees at the bottom of the playground because I had nobody to sit with. In Vienna, it had been our nanny who kept our clothes clean and made our beds, and it had been the housekeeper who kept the house tidy and dusted, and our cook who had cooked our food. My mother had only ever been in a kitchen to check the day's menu. In Australia, we had no nanny, and no housekeeper, and no cook. My mother taught us painting, writing, how to listen to music, how to appreciate and create art, and how to be quiet when someone else was talking. She herself learnt somehow to get nourishing food on the table, but the house was always a shambles. If we expected visitors, there had to be a quick tidying of all the clutter that was forever lying around. You couldn't call on us unexpectedly. Because my mother had no idea as to how to be a housewife, we children never learnt either. Housework just wasn't our thing. When I married, I tried to learn, but I never really mastered it. Even with today's wonderful appliances, my home sits on the edge of chaos. We were lucky in that my father believed passionately in education, even for girls. So I went to university and entered a faculty where women were rare. However, this paucity of women in the faculty was actually a plus. Because there were few women, we stuck together, and I became part of a group at last. I did well in my exams, married a wonderful man, had 2 children, and, after a 14-year maternity leave, had an interesting and fulfilling career. I've had a goodly share of life's victories and all the accolades that go with them. A highlight of my career was a lecture to some 2,000 people at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna. As I grew older, I realised I was not alone in having felt like an outsider. Attitudes in Australia had changed. We had won the Great War. Refugees were now called New Australians, not bloody refos. But I knew that the feeling of isolation must have been the same. It was still them and us, even though I was now one of us. And it was not just new arrivals who could have this feeling of isolation. My career involved dealing with the poorer sections of society, mostly age pensioners, and I made it my business to be especially courteous, helpful, and caring to those who came within my sphere. I knew that going the extra mile for them made a tiny difference, and since I have retired, that knowledge has helped me deal with the world's catastrophes. I realise that my agonising and feeling bad won't help anyone. If I can help, I do. If I cannot help directly, I need to find a niche, however small, to do whatever I, as an individual, can do to make at least someone happy. For my own problems, I have a small black box to put them in, where they tend to shrink over time. When I retired, I took up botanical painting. It was creative, hugely demanding, frustrating, difficult, time-consuming, and immensely satisfying. But as I grow older still, I seem to lack the strength to create. For a time, I thought that perhaps I should leave ambition to a younger crowd who have their own new hills to climb and their own dragons to slay. But now, I realise that the challenges are still there, even if they are in a different guise. When I drop my comb and it bounces underneath the bed, if I manage to get down, if I manage to find it and to stand up again all on my own, wow, I did it! Yes, I can still win. So, what have I learnt over the years? That the most important thing in my life is the love of the people around me, that trying to make others happy is a counterpoint for the world's injustices, that getting older has its own victories, and that housework actually does need to be done. My mantra comes from Shakespeare. There is nothing either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Polonius in Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 2. The end.